Ladies and gentlemen, as far as TV series infested with Marvel Cinematic Universe and Marvel comic book Easter eggs go, Runaways Season 2, specifically Episode 1, does seem to be up there at the top of the list. So if you happen to be one of those big fans of these kind of hunts for Easter eggs and finding of Easter eggs, then you are definitely welcome back to join me on another one of my review and Easter egg videos in the first 3 episodes of Runaways Season 2. Now this is gonna be a long journey, so I'm not gonna waste any more of your time doing introductions, and instead, we're just gonna get started right away in number 1. That major trolling moment at the very beginning of the season, I did love that. I mean, I did suspect at first that they caught the wrong kids, but I did as well wonder if they did catch the 6 runaways right off the bat, then where the hell is the series heading with this story? It was all hilarious nonetheless. Number 2, the framing of the runaways for the murder of Destiny Gonzalez as of the end of Season 1, that tends to be very true to the comics. The way the parents used their connections to the LAPD on the premiere of Season 2 to try and find their kids, that also stands to be very true to the comics. But number 3, we get our first Easter egg 10 minutes into the premiere of the season. We've got this entire situation with Alex, the money, how he got it, Nico wondering if his parents gave it to him, and every single one of the runaways pretty much wondering how he got that money. So, to cut a very long story short over here, Alex does betray his friends in the comics. Over there, he does give in to his parents, does cave in to his parents, essentially giving in and caving in to the biggest villain in the Runaway comics, the Gibborim. And when it gets all critical in the comics, when push comes to shove, the only person that he chooses to save out of all his friends, along with himself, his and her parents, happens to be Nico Minoru. But moving on to number 4, along with the Easter egg to Alex's betrayal of the team in the comics, and the possible foreshadowing that kind of holds to the future he has on the series, we've got a Marvel Cinematic Universe Easter egg on that very same scene. We get to see a TV appearance of a WHIH special report about the Runaways. Now WHIH, and as you know, is the MCU's fake news front. We've seen it a lot before in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we're gonna see it a lot in the future, but I think it was just there to kind of prove connectivity between the series and the rest of the MCU. But next up is number 5, the mind-wiping drug referred to on the premiere is a total throwback to the SYNNERGY serum. Now the SYNNERGY serum, it was introduced on Season 1 and was used on Frank Dean to ensure he forgets all about Leslie's affair with Jonah. Number 6, the LITECOIN license plates on the Range Rover the Runaways stole along the way. Now that sounds like a play on the cryptocurrency, Litecoin, especially with the 1s and 0 replacing the I's and the O. Number 7, considering that Chase was the one to steal the Range Rover, the car itself became a reference of its own to the first mode of transportation provided by none other than Chase in the comics for the Runaways. In the comics though, and on the other hand, it was a stolen van. Number 8. This is a total deviation from the comics. So when it comes to romantic entanglements, they kinda changed the situation on the first season when it comes to Nico. What they did over there is instead of having Nico invested in a relationship with Alex, they had her more invested in a relationship with Karolina. The only bit that is true to the comics in all of this happens to be that Karolina has always had a crush on Nico, but nonetheless it was not all that reciprocated as it is portrayed on the series. The product of this deviation from the comic book relationship status of all of these characters happens to be the introduction of Lizzie on the premiere of the 2nd season as a new romantic interest for Alex. But the introduction of Lizzie brings us to number 9. I'm recording this without watching anything past the 3rd episode, so don't really take my word for it over here, whatever I'm gonna say on point number 9. But Lizzie to me sounded like a possible nod to the comic book character Firestar. Now the series is yet to prove me right or wrong, and this is yet to be seen, but Elizabeth Allen Osborn, also known as Liz Allen in the comics, as well as Firestar, was introduced as a schoolmate of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson. However though, when it comes to the Ultimate Marvel reboot, there's an additional bit to her story. She actually ends up becoming a runaway herself. Now the actress chosen for the role is the right age to be just that on the series. The nature of the role as well, the fact that there is revenge brewing in the background when it comes to the death of Darius, all of that kind of leads to the possibility that her role on the series might actually lead up to her becoming the series version of Liz Allen from the comics. But 9 down though, and a lot more to go. Number 10, the newspaper on the premiere has a direct reference to S.H.I.E.L.D. as we get to see an obituary of one Agent KIRK SKADDEN of S.H.I.E.L.D. But the interesting part over here is, this is not just a reference to S.H.I.E.L.D. as an organization, it is also a direct reference to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as a TV series. And yes, we did meet one KIRK SKADDEN on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and we did meet him on the series premiere as well. Agent KIRK happens to be the man that Maria Hill entrusts that Chitauri artifact to on the very premiere of the series.
Any idea who Von Trapp was planning to sell it to?
I'm more interested in how this Rising Tide group found out about it.
Number 11 though, Victor is still trapped in that virtual realm that Jonah put him in at the end of the first season. But besides the fact that Jonah set all of this up, it all does in a way, with the mood and the lighting of the scenes, remind us all of the framework on the 4th season run of AOS. It actually feels, and in so many instances, some of which I'm going to be mentioning over the course of this review, that this entire arc with Victor was totally inspired by the framework idea that was introduced on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4. But while we are on the subject of things that Jonah is doing to other people and to the world, number 12, what is down there in that hole? What is Jonah trying to dig up? Now, whatever it is that is down there, it is described as not alive in the conventional sense, but having some energy signature. So right then and there, the question that we had on Season 1 is being brought up again. Are we talking the Gibborim in their conventional sense? Are we talking these godlike beings that we came to know in the comics, the ones that lived hundreds of years before mankind even existed? So we are told that they are alive, or kind of alive. You know, they have an energy signature. We are also told that they make noises, which is kind of explained right away into they can't talk in their own language, but they can still talk. To add to that, we're told that there might be more than one of them, so it is not just this one creature that Jonah is trying to dig up. I'd say the description kind of fits. But number 13, that place the Runaways found at the very end of the premiere of the season, that happens to be the residence of the Runaways from the comics, the HOSTEL. So on the pages of the comics, the place was originally a mansion that was built in the 1920s. In the comics as well, the place happens to be hidden, just like it is on the series. The only major difference between how the place was found in the comics and how it's found in the series is that instead of being found by Karolina, as the case is over here, it was discovered by Chase. So the counterpart of Chase in the comics is responsible for figuring out a place where they could live and also bringing them their first mode of transportation. But next up is number 14, No, you're not the light of the world, but you shine on me. The words that we see on one of the walls of the mansion, these are pretty much lyrics out of Light of the World, a song by the Gun Club Band. But besides this being the simple pop culture reference, it also felt like a reference to Karolina, a description of Karolina. With all that's going on, with her being the one to find the words on the wall, it all felt like all of this is kind of descriptive of her powers and abilities, her light-based powers and abilities. But number 15, while the Griffith Observatory that we see in the meet between Karolina and Jonah on the premiere, and then repeatedly on the second episode happens to be a real building, it does have its appearances in the comics as well. That kind of makes it a double feature, something out of real life, as well as some sort of reference to the appearance of this building in the comics. Number 16, the way we see that pillar falling apart within the mansion as the second episode starts, the way the entire place is actually in shambles as they find it. That is actually very true to the comics, very reminiscent of how they found the place, the state they found the place in the comics. Number 17, Gert's relationship with Chase, that is very typical as well of their comic book relationship. Gertrude, and just like she is on the series, she is known in the comics to be sarcastic, and they're both known to be bickering in the comics, and a lot. But even better, just like the case was on the second episode of the series, in the comics the sarcastic side of Gert always boiled down to a better and calmer side the longer their conversations went on. But another one out of the comics with a little bit of variation is number 18, the scene with Tina and Nico and the fight that ensued on episode 2. That entire situation with the two of them fighting one another, that is an actual variation of a similar comic book event. So in the comics as well they do fight it out, only instead of Tina handing the staff of one to her daughter and willingly, she's actually about to strike her with it when Nico's body ends up absorbing it. So I'm not sure we're ever going to see that on the series, but in the comics Nico is supposed to be able to absorb the staff of one into herself and release it out of her body. But number 19 though, Molly Hernandez. She's the show's version of Molly Hayes from the comics, and she is an exact replica of the character in so many ways. But one way does stand out more than any other, which is basically all about her powers and abilities. The fact that she gets fatigued every time she uses her powers. That is very reminiscent of her comic book counterpart as well, because she does have to sleep after using her powers for a limited amount of time. Number 20. Powering the HOSTEL. That was once again a comic book moment out of the Runaways comics. In the comics though, there were two versions of the HOSTEL, the guest house and the main house. The one though that we seem to have been introduced to on the series looks more like the latter if I remember correctly, and the latter is more stable in the comics. This one is not as stable. But nonetheless, and as I mentioned earlier, both were discovered by Chase, and upon discovering this one, he did work his magic in the comics as well. So just like he did over here, he worked on powering up the place with electricity, and in addition to that gave himself and the rest of the Runaways running water and wireless internet. But 20 down and 8 to go, number 21, away from the core of this review and mentioning specific events, let's talk some Alex Wilder. Now, considering what happened between Nico and Karolina at the end of Season 1, I was wondering where they're taking Alex Wilder, so I really did appreciate how they gave him his own arc, integrating this arc as well into the arc of Darius. That was really good. I really like the character of Darius. Really hate that he died, gonna be talking and ranting about it in a moment here, but nonetheless, really like the character of Darius. The fact that they gave Alex a love interest on the other hand was really good as well, really appreciated because that's a lot of his motive in the comics, love for Nico. So right at this moment, if Alex is ever to end up betraying the team, just like he did in the comics, I would suppose that Lizzie would end up replacing Nico in the sense that she would be that one person that he would still want to save and try to save as well from the wrath of the Gibborim. But the 22nd item on our list happens to be about all these characters that are written all over the place when it comes to the arc of Victor, Jonah, and Janet. These characters that we do see so many times on these 3 episodes, they are very reminiscent of the Kree alphabet that we've gotten to see so many times in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and especially on AOS, more specifically, the 5th season of the series. However though, while it does look a lot like it upon reviewing the Kree alphabet we've seen before, this is not really it. So what is this alphabet? Now I'm thinking that considering that Karolina and Jonah are Majesdanians, there is always the chance that this is Majesdanian alphabet. Now for other reasons that are meaningless and useless to explain at the moment until we see how the show plays it all out, they could as well possibly be Skrull alphabets. But that is a discussion for another time, so let's just stick with Majesdanian for the time being. But the 23rd on my list, going into this virtual world by choice and on a mission, Janet's action, and the choice to make this action. All of that reminded me of Daisy and Gemma on Season 4 of AOS, and the choice they made on the final arc of the season to plug themselves into the framework in order to save their teammates. But number 24, the Runaways using their powers as they face off with Jeffrey Wilder close to the end of the 3rd episode. That was a pretty good initial demonstration of how they would work together. Now that entire sequence wasn't really the best show of power. I mean, it is supposed to be about the development of how they use their powers and how they use them together. Molly carrying Alex though was just funny. But more or less, I think both sequences, the one with Tina and this one with Jeffrey, they are both about building the team dynamic. But number 25, this is the one thing I hated about the season so far. The murder of Darius Davis, that was the worst thing they could have done at this time. I mean, I did expect they would try to frame him, but I did not expect they would kill him. So unfortunately, they just killed one of my favorites so far this season, and I'm hating it. But number 26, Street Fighter II Turbo, played by Nico and Alex close to the end of the 3rd episode. Not just a pop culture reference, not just a gaming reference, but also one that hit very close to home for me. I just remember going to the arcades when the arcades were a thing and spending a lifetime playing that game, and a lot of money as well. But besides this being a pop culture reference, Alex choosing to play the game with Chun-Li is number 27, because one, choosing Chun-Li to play the game with her is about choosing a powerful woman of Asian descent, kind of representing Nico over here and his crush on her on the 1st season and his never-ending love for her in the comics. But there is also two, and I don't believe that is intentional, but Ming-Na Wen, who portrays Melinda May on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., happened to have portrayed the role of Chun-Li on the 90s Street Fighter movie. But all of that brings us to the final point on my list, and Topher. So I remind you that I've not seen anything beyond episode 3, so you can take whatever I say over here with a grain of salt. But Topher in the comics happens to be a villain associated with the Runaways. He's also a vampire who's a bit over 100 years old, But whether or not the series is going to be portraying the guy as a vampire, whether or not it wants to go there to start with, that is yet to be seen. So more on him later, but suffice to say that if Alex is destined to betray the team at some point down the road on the series, just like he did in the comics, he is still a good guy right now. He is still not planning to betray them. But Topher, on the other hand, is supposed to not be good news and from the get-go. But that being said though, my work with the first 3 episodes is done. I'm gonna be traveling on business for the next couple of days. There's this meeting I have to attend, but I'll be reviewing the rest of the episodes of the season when I get back home. But in the meanwhile, do let me know in the comments down below if there are any Easter eggs that I might have missed on the first 3 episodes of the season, and if you did like these 3 episodes and what your favorite parts of these 3 episodes were. Don't forget as well to let me know if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like. Now if you did like it, and I sure hope you did, make sure you subscribe and enable notifications for my future videos, community posts, and live streams. Until you tune in for another one of my videos though, thank you so much for tuning in to this one, happy holidays, and have a great day.